Inside the Chi Yuan Sutra Society late at night, all was silent. Only the faint flicker of candlelight swayed in the meditation room, illuminating the serene countenance of the Buddha. The moonlight filters through the curtains, casting a soft and tranquil glow upon the ground. Good Enlightenment stood outside the meditation chamber, his expression solemn, his mind filled with confusion and questions. He had practiced for a long time, and though he spent each day in the company of the Buddha and heard many Dharma teachings, the phrase "form is emptiness" always left his mind unsettled. Whenever the Buddha taught and exemplified the teachings of emptiness and dependent origination, Shariputra could always sense the profound wisdom within. However, he was never able to fully comprehend the true meaning of form is emptiness, especially the aspect concerning form itself. The Buddha taught his disciples to avoid lustful thoughts, yet he often emphasized the fundamental doctrine that form is emptiness. Could it be that this form is truly, as the common people think, merely referring to the alluring desires between men and women? A question naturally arises in the mind of Zen. Since all is emptiness, since all phenomena arise dependently, why does the Buddha repeatedly stress the need to avoid lustful desires? Is true cultivation about renouncing all appearances and suppressing all desires? If form is truly emptiness, as the Buddha said, and emptiness is nothingness, then female form is merely an illusory appearance. Why, then, is it still considered a taboo for practitioners? He couldn't help but recall some remarks from his fellow practitioners, who often said that avoiding female allure was meant to prevent desire, and desire is the root of affliction. However, the emptiness taught by the Buddha does not mean that nothing truly exists. Why then can female allurements disturb the mind and become obstacles to spiritual practice? These doubts had long lingered in Ananda's mind, and late at night, in the quiet solitude, he could no longer restrain himself from seeking guidance from the Buddha. He walked to the Buddha's meditation chamber, joined his palms gently, and softly said, "World-honored one, there is a matter in my heart that I do not understand. I earnestly request you to dispel my doubts." He did not directly voice the doubts in his heart, but waited for the Buddha's response with the utmost humility. The Buddha remained seated on the meditation cushion, eyes gently closed, a trace of compassionate smile gracing his face. After a moment, the Buddha slowly spoke, his voice like a gentle breeze caressing the surface of a lake, calm yet resolute. "Sadhana, what troubles you?" In the heart of Shanju, a surge of courage finally mustered, and he began to speak. "Tathagata, you often teach us that form is emptiness, yet disciples still cannot comprehend. If form is fundamentally illusory, then why must we abstain from lustful thoughts? Form is nothing but an illusionary color. Since it is empty, why not be unattached like grass, trees, mountains, and stones? Why must practitioners avoid it, as they would avoid tigers and scorpions?" Shanjue's words carried a hint of urgency, as he sought the Buddha's guidance to unravel the mysteries within his heart. The Buddha smiled gently without responding directly. He signaled to Shanju to follow him. Good Awakening, still confused and uncertain, obediently followed behind the Buddha. They walked out of the meditation chamber and stepped onto the path in the courtyard. The night sky was as dark as ink. The moonlight flowed like water, quietly illuminating every silent corner. The entire auspicious encounter was silent and still, with only the occasional croak of frogs in the distance, as if adding a sense of mystery and solemnity to the night's dialogue. The Buddha, accompanied by Ananda, walked towards a forest beyond the place of fear, where moonlight filtered through the leaves, casting dappled patterns that resembled thousands of stars dancing upon the ground. The Buddha paused beneath a towering Bodhi tree, pointed to the leaves on its branches, and with a smile asked, "Good seer, how do you see this tree?" Good Awakening paused and followed the Buddha's finger with his gaze, looking at the ancient Bodhi tree before him. The branches are lush and verdant, vibrant and thriving with life. I respectfully report to the Blessed One that this tree is lush with branches and leaves, full of vibrant life, and indeed very beautiful. Good Awakening sincerely praised, and the Buddha gently nodded. Is it beautiful? He repeated the question, beautifully, and Shanju answered without hesitation. The Buddha smiled faintly and asked again, would his eyebrows arouse lustful thoughts in you? Shanju furrowed his brows, pondered for a moment, then shook his head. No, it is merely a tree. I would not become infatuated because of it. Very good. The Buddha nodded in satisfaction, his gaze gently resting on Shanju. So, if a beautiful woman stood before you, would you be able to remain as serene and unattached as when facing this tree, with your mind like still water, free from any clinging? Sangju's cheeks flushed slightly, and he lowered his head, feeling somewhat ashamed. How his mind fluctuates in the face of female allure is something he knows best himself. That unconscious attraction often stirs waves in his heart, making it difficult to maintain self-control. The Buddha sighed softly, a gentle trace of concern in his voice. This is the root of the problem. The beauty of a tree does not disturb your mind because you perceive its essence. Its beauty does not depend on your desires. However, the beauty of form easily stirs the cravings within your heart, unsettling your state of mind. The problem does not lie in form, but in the attachment and discrimination within your own mind. The Buddha saw Sanyua lowering his head in contemplation and gently said, Sanyua, have you ever seen the moon reflected in the water? Shanju lifted his head, a trace of doubt flickering in his eyes, then nodded. Venerable Shakyamuni, I have often seen the moon on the water's surface at dawn or night, its beautiful radiance reflected in the water. The Buddha smiled gently and continued to ask, is the moon reflected in the water the real moon? Shanju was momentarily stunned, clearly not expecting the Buddha to ask this question. He was silent for a moment, then replied, certainly not, Venerable Shakyamuni. That is merely the reflection of the moon resting upon the surface of the water. The Buddha nodded, his gaze gentle and profound, as if awaiting Ananda's deeper realization. You are right. The moon reflected in the water is not the real moon. It is merely the image of the moon, the result of the interaction between the water's surface and the moonlight, light, and the eye. That reflected image cannot exist without the surface of the water. The Buddha's voice was as clear as water as he continued. However, although you know it is not a tangible object, have you ever been touched by the beauty of the moon, even to the point of wanting to grasp it? The Buddha's gaze was full of guidance and profound meaning. Shanju's face flushed slightly, and ripples stirred within his heart. Indeed, there was a time when he stood by the pond, gazing at the reflection of the bright moon on the water, and a sudden, inexplicable yearning arose in his heart, as if he wished to grasp it. Although reason tells him it is merely an illusion, this is precisely where you often become lost. The Buddha softly said, people of the world often regard all things by mistaking illusory images as reality. The moon reflected in the water, though an illusory image, can still evoke clinging and even the desire to grasp it. The reason you find it beautiful and are deeply moved is because you cannot see through its illusory nature. Shanjua lowered his head, feeling a heaviness in his heart. The Buddha continued, sensual desire is like the moon reflected in water. Although it is beautiful and arouses desire, its nature is neither lasting nor real. Just like the moon on the surface of the water, it depends on external conditions, the meeting of the water's surface and the moonlight. The beauty of female sensuality also depends on human desire and the longing within the heart. It does not possess an eternal and immutable essence. Ultimately, it is illusory. Every word of the Buddha is like a ray of sunlight parting the clouds, gradually illuminating the confusion in the mind of the awakened one. He began to understand that form was not, as he had thought, a concrete material existence, but rather the appearance formed by the conjunction of all causes and conditions. It does not possess a fixed, eternal self-nature, but manifests according to the attachments and desires of the human mind. If people can transcend all these appearances and see through their impermanence and illusory nature, they can truly realize, as the Buddha said, that form is emptiness. Why then do practitioners need to distance themselves from these appearances? The questions in Shanjue's mind were still not fully resolved. Although he had understood that form is illusory, he still did not comprehend why practitioners should avoid or even refrain from contacting these appearances. The Buddha's gaze became more profound, for the human mind is fragile and easily deceived by appearances. The beauty you see and the desires you perceive often cause you to become lost within, unable to extricate yourself. Even if you understand that everything is merely illusory images, the desires and attachments in your heart can still drag you into the abyss. The Buddha paused, then said, "Look, the beauty of this tree depends on its own existence. It does not rely on your inner clinging or desires. He naturally manifests the power and beauty of life, and you can appreciate him without developing attachment because of him. It is precisely because you have seen his true nature without associating him with your own desires." Sanjay quietly listened, and gradually a feeling of sudden enlightenment arose in his heart. He recalled the various troubles he had experienced with desire and form, and realized that the reason he was easily disturbed was not due to the allure of desire and form itself. It is the untrained desires and attachments within the mind that prevent one from seeing through appearances. The Buddha's voice was gentle yet full of power. Practitioners must distance themselves from external temptations, not to deny their existence, but to keep the mind serene, unaffected by the fluctuations of the external environment. This helps maintain inner peace until one can transcend appearances and perceive the true nature of all things. Shariputra listened to the Buddha's teachings, feeling as if the fog in his heart was gradually lifting. Yet, he still had questions and continued to ask. Since we know all attachments are mere illusions, how can we truly sever them? If these attachments are only illusory images, then how should we face them? A trace of compassion flickered in the Buddha's eyes as he quietly looked at Shariputra and softly said, "When facing attachments, the most important thing is not to forcibly suppress them, but to realize their illusory and impermanent nature. You see, the reflection in the water does not remain forever. It dissipates as the surface of the water ripples. Attachments are likewise such. They cling to your desires and emotions, manifesting in accordance with the changes of the mind state. If you can perceive their illusion deep within your heart, they will no longer have the power to control you." Shanjue remained silent for a moment, as if contemplating the Buddha's words. He reflected on his years of attachment to various desires, those desires that once seemed incredibly real and irresistible, and realized they were merely illusions manifested in the mind. He took a deep breath, seemingly understanding the Buddha's teachings. So how should we train ourselves to see through these illusory attachments? The Buddha smiled gently, his gaze both kind and profound. The path of practice is to continuously observe one's own mind, to see how desires and attachments arise and how they fade away. Whenever you see a flower bloom and feel affection, you must ask yourself, where does this affection originate from? Does it truly exist? Whenever you see a beautiful woman and desire arises in your heart, ask yourself, what is the source of this desire? Can it bring me genuine satisfaction? Through continuous reflection and mindfulness, you will realize that desire is nothing but a wisp of smoke in the mind, dissipating with the slightest breath. Good, knowing listened, and a clarity unlike any before arose in his heart. It begins to realize that all attachments and desires are seeds sown within the mind. These seeds can quietly take root and sprout without his awareness, controlling his thoughts and actions. So, how can practitioners completely see through these attachments? Is it sufficient to understand that form is emptiness, so we can eliminate all attachments and be both wise and stable? The Buddha gently shook his head, Form is emptiness is not a momentary insight, but a continuous process of mindful awareness. It is not merely a theoretical understanding of emptiness. It is also a cultivation of the heart-mind. Look, the reflection in the water is not originally empty. It only becomes clear when the water's surface is calm. If the surface of the water ripples, the reflection becomes blurred and disappears. Your intention is such that only when your mind is calm and peaceful can you perceive the emptiness of all phenomena. If your mind is ordinarily filled with lustful thoughts and attachments, the principle that form is emptiness cannot be truly understood. Therefore, practice is about maintaining inner peace and mindfulness, not allowing desires and attachments to disturb our state of mind. The wise ask quietly, with a heart of clarity. The Buddha nodded and said, "Yes, spiritual practice is not merely about studying the Dharma. It is also about maintaining a serene relationship between the mind and external circumstances, perceiving the true nature of things rather than being deceived by appearances. Whenever attachment arises in your mind, it marks a moment farther away from awakening. One must constantly remind oneself that this is merely an illusory image, and one should not be swayed by it." In Samyukti's heart, a sudden clarity emerged, feeling an unprecedented sense of ease and release. Originally, all afflictions and troubles are merely attachments and delusions of the mind. True liberation is simply seeing through all this illusion and impermanence, returning to the deepest inner peace and clarity. He held profound devotion toward the Buddha, his grateful gaze filled with reverence and determination. "Venerable Shakyamuni, thank you for your teachings." Good awareness whispered softly, "From now on, I shall cultivate with greater diligence, no longer losing myself in illusory appearances, but facing my own heart directly, seeking true wisdom and enlightenment." The Buddha gently nodded, his eyes shining with the brilliance of wisdom. The path of practice is not easy, but as long as you uphold your inner resolve and remain unmoved by the storms of the external world, you will be like a lotus emerging unstained from mud, transcending all afflictions and perceiving true light. Shanju slowly rose, bowed deeply to the Buddha, and the inner fog of confusion had vanished, replaced by an unprecedented peace and clarity. He knows that true cultivation begins from this moment. The long path may be arduous, but he is ready, stepping forward with wisdom and awakening firmly.